Hey everyone, my name is Matthew Moybon. I'm the co-founder of a company called 220. We create online courses to help students succeed in the real world. And today, I'm very excited to present to you 21st Century Community Learning Center directors on how to triple your impact and increase your funding in just 90 days. And that probably sounds like a bold claim, but in this video, we're going to go through a 4-step process that you can use at your organization to help you achieve these results. And we're first going to start and even go through some case studies of organizations around the country that are using this system to get these results and more. And at the end, we'll talk about how you can implement these steps at your organization and get these results fast, get these results now. But first, let's start with some organizations that are using this system and getting great results. Another statewide after-school network servicing 21st century community learning sites, Indiana Afterschool Network, super high quality, great people over there. They came to us because during the pandemic, they were looking for a way to, again, engage high school students in a college career readiness program, but didn't have anything readily available for high school students. And they wanted to be able to offer 21st century sites a program that they could participate in. So we started a statewide leadership cohort using an online program, and we went from 0 to 200 plus students engaged in a college career readiness program online in 3 months. And we had a really successful first cohort with programs engaged around the state, 208 students. And we're going to expand that into more students, more programs, and other content tracks like personal finance, entrepreneurship, and college and career readiness, directly related to resume and interview. So another really exciting program there. Chick Tech Chicago, what a cool organization. They get girls involved early in tech through their programs, help them build valuable skills like coding and other technical app development skills that they can use to lead to meaningful employment or meaningful college placement and then employment. And they were looking to start an entrepreneurship program in Chicago because they didn't have anything around that. And so what we did was we partnered together. They applied for a grant through the Chicago Learning Exchange and got a $15,000 grant to start a new entrepreneurship program that we worked on together, which involved workshops at our incubator, 1871 here in Chicago, and then followed that up. And the most of the content was through our online course. And at the end, these girls presented on the apps that they created and the passion projects and the conceptual companies that they created in front of a huge room of Chick Tech Chicago students and staff. And it was just such a cool experience. You can see there Katie, who's a visionary leader, the CEO, had really good things to say about the students, the results that the students got from, and then the impact it had on the students participating. And then Anna was the mentor in locally here in Chicago that did such a good job with the program and helped us have an amazing experience for those students. Employ Indy, what a cool organization. Just everybody that works there is such high quality and so fun to work with. So they run these in-person trainings every single month to help career coaches and professional staff that are all working to get displaced workers, people who used to work in the workforce or didn't, or never actually graduated and got their GED, so they weren't able to get meaningful employment. They support all of these career coaches around Marion County, which houses Indianapolis in Indiana, to level them up so that they can better help these displaced workers that they're trying to get back into the workforce. They relied on in-person trainings to do that mostly, so they held in-person monthly trainings that any career navigator, career coach could go to, but that was limited to the people who could show up to that in-person training. Once the training was over, there was really no way for a career coach or a professional staff member working with these people to be able to get this training content and go through this training. So they partnered with us to create an on-demand learning management system for all of Marion County. And we were able to get them 20 plus courses as it stands now, and we're working on building out more in a wide range of different competencies, and they're on demand. So now these these trainings can reach so many more people, which will ultimately lead to more people back in the workforce. So it's already having an amazing impact on the county, and it's only going to get better as we're continuing to build out that system. And you can see there Rodney, who's one of the leaders of Employ Indy, so good to work with, had some really good things to say about the project. So really cool program happening there at Employ Indy. And those are just a few of the organizations that we've been fortunate to work with and that are using the system that we're going to talk about today to implement at their programs, get triple their impact and get more funding for their organization, so they can stop worrying about just day-to-day expenses and sustainability and start to think about growth in the future, being innovative, having huge impact, being a great place to work and a great place, a central staple for their community. So these are some of the other organizations we've worked with or places where we've been fortunate to be featured. Our work has been featured. Who is this training for? Just to make sure you're in the right place, this is for a 21st Century Community Learning Center director. That's you. We have so much respect for you because you are the visionary leaders that are helping shape today's youth and today's communities. You're working so hard not to just keep the status quo. You're trying to provide your students, your staff, your families, and your community with amazing opportunities to level up. It's not about doing what you've always done and just trying to keep things afloat. You're trying to change the game and have a lasting impact on your community and leave a legacy. This can be tough to do, though, because there's so much asked of you. You wear so many different hats, not to mention, not to be excluded, grant writing, program evaluation, staff development, burnout, and turnover, which all are rampant in after school. You've got such a wide range of quality in your staff. You've got we talked to some organizations who have, they have a PhD that's an instructor, and then on the same hand, they also have a 19-year-old who doesn't have any experience other than babysitting their younger siblings. So there's such a wide variety, but you're trying to stretch your resources as much as you can. So sometimes you have to ask a lot of your staff, which can lead to that burnout and turnover that we see so often in after school. And all this while you're trying to hit your metrics, you're trying to satisfy your current funders. And sometimes you even have to deal with schools that are not cooperating as they should with your program, whether it's through recruitment, promoting your program, participating in ways that they agreed to participate in before, or that they should be just participating more because you're filling a lot of the gaps that are left by education. But more on that in a little bit. So you're worried about all this. You have your hand in all of these things, all while you're worried about the financial sustainability of your organization. You have these questions in the back of your head. Will my 21st Century Community Learning Center funding get cut at the next cohort renewal? Will my local funder continue funding my program next year? Have they been impacted by COVID or by something else? Or did their priorities change? Hopefully not. Hopefully we're keeping that relationship going and having an open dialogue, but it's always a concern. And if not, if any of this funding goes away, will I be able to keep Mr. Jones or Mrs. Smith on my payroll? And if I can't keep that staff or my funding gets cut, how will this affect my students who I'm ultimately doing this for? And how will this affect me? Would it even affect my job? Will I have a job or the same job, or will I be able to do what I've always done in this role or what people have done before me? We've seen this play out over the last 10 years because we've been able to work with thousands of students and hundreds of organizations all over the country. That's why we put together this video. If you want to stop worrying about your funding, if you want to start empowering your staff to have more fun at your program and to not feel so burnt out, but to feel re-energized and find that passion again for after school and working with students. And if you want your students to get re-engaged in your program and generate long-term outcomes that can get you more predictable funding sources, then stick around because this is for you. You are in the right place. If you want to grow your programming and funding opportunities for high school students, you want to do it without constantly applying for grants. You want to create a standout program recognized by funders and partners because that standout program is what's going to get you recognition, get you credibility, and help you establish those more predictable funding sources and allow you to grow beyond just your foundational funding. You want to stop worrying about hitting your reps, your regularly attending participants. Those are fundamental to 21st century and to a lot of different grants is meeting those minimum attendance and participation requirements. You want to stop worrying about that. We've got some great tips for you to help you with that. You want to produce powerful, sustainable outcomes for your students. Again, you're not here to maintain the status quo. You want to take things to the next level for your students. And you want to help all students. You not just the ones that are already eager and excited, but you really want to help those students who are struggling in school or who are disengaged, even right now in your program. Maybe they've had to overcome trauma or have something happen at home, or they don't have the support at home that they should. So it comes off as disengagement. It shows itself as disengagement in your program. And it seems like these students don't care. But what we need to do is actually help them care, help them do it themselves, not force them to care. We'll talk about how to do that. You want to standardize your staff quality without spending a fortune or so much time of your own time planning, getting the training, or doing the training yourself. We talked about how wide ranging that quality can be. And so it's important to make sure that from staff member to staff member, you're not losing that program quality and consistency. And to do that, if you want to reduce your dependency on individual staff while increasing your program and outcome quality, then you're in the right place. If you want to stop feeling burned out, get some work-life balance, and find more joy in your daily work, we talk to so many after-school leaders around the country that are just burning the candle at both ends. They're so burnt out because they're trying to do as much as they can with their own time. They're trying to do as much as they can with their limited resources. They're constantly being asked to put out fires because everyone always goes to the leader. That's just what happens. It happened when I was president of my fraternity. It happens in all companies where the structure isn't as firm, and after school is no different, where everyone just feels like they should go to the head of the organization to get their problem solved when they should be solving problems themselves. So you just feel like these leaders are talking to us and they're like, I just don't know if I'll ever be able to get out of the hamster wheel. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find that work-life balance and be able to find more joy in your work. If you want to do that, if you want to have more fun every single day, then we're going to talk about some systems we can help you automate that will allow you to have more fun every single day. We know you love what you do. It's already amazing what you do, but we want you to have more fun doing it. And if you want to be seen as a leader and an innovator in your community and leave a lasting legacy, which I know you do, then you are in the right place. All that being said, you're probably not in the right place if you're not in after school, if you're not a leader of an after school program. You don't have to be 21st century. You can definitely be after school. But if you are just in education, if you're a teacher or a staff member or a principal or a superintendent, this may not resonate with you as much, because we're going to be talking about doing very innovative things and doing things quickly and trying new things out and setting big goals and not having long lead times or ramp up times. These are things that are common in education because there's so many decision makers that have to sign off on things, so much red tape. You have to deal with teacher buy-in and things just don't move very fast. So this may not resonate as well. If you predominantly serve elementary school students and you don't have an interest in expanding to high school, at least late middle school, but high school, that's where most of this content is going to be focused. So this may not be as relevant for you. If you're just trying to maintain your current funding, staff, and programs, or just make incremental improvements, basically the status quo, this is not for you. We're going to talk about mixing things up, game-changing, being innovative to grow things and do things you've never done before so you can get funding and opportunities that you've never had before. If you believe the current education system is producing the outcomes we need and that college is the only path to success, this probably isn't going to resonate with you. If you're on your way out of the organization, you're either about to retire or you're moving on to a different organization, you're just not looking to shake things up, this is probably not for you, because we are going to talk about shaking things up. If you don't want to have an amazing impact on your students and communities, this definitely is not for you. But if these do not resonate with you, if these resonate with you, then you're in the right place and you should stick around. The truth is that you can triple your impact and increase your funding by leveraging a new online program experience. Now, people have mixed feelings about online courses and online programs. A lot of programs previously, before the pandemic, didn't have any online programming in their after-school program, or it was a really small piece of it, where now, after the pandemic, they were forced to install some sort of online learning into their program if they wanted to be able to work with students, because most students weren't able to show up and most programs weren't able to run in-person sessions for a long time. Online programs, online learning is here to stay. It is not pandemic specific. The pandemic just accelerated what was already coming. And so the organizations, the after school programs who figure out how to incorporate online learning as a core feature of their program are going to have an advantage moving forward. The problem here, even if you're willing and want to establish an online program at your organization, most organizations don't know where to start with online programs. There are so many different decisions to be made and options you have for how to do this. So these options can lead to decision paralysis, which means programs get stuck using what they already have. That means you're doing what you've always done, which can lead to ineffective or at least stagnant outcomes, endless grant writing because you're trying to convince funders to just fund you to allow you to do what you've always done, which is not what funders want to do. They want to see their money go to work and see you make the most of it and continue to grow and move beyond it. So if you're just being stagnant, that's not the best path to funding sustainability. And with all of that, you can still have that staff burnout that makes everything harder. We at 220 are the only 100% intentionally designed after-school online platform that focuses on giving your whole organization ready to implement programs that are designed to actually reduce staff burnout, reduce the prep time so we reduce staff burnout, increase student engagement, which will lead to better program results, and better program results lead to more funding opportunities. A little bit about me first. I said I'm a co-founder at the beginning. That's because my co-founder is Joseph, my brother. A lot of people ask us, how could you ever start a company with your sibling? I would go nuts. It works for us so well. We have always been really good friends. We've always had each other's best interests at heart. We have really we've always had shared interests and goals, and we want to see each other succeed. So starting a company together is almost like it was meant to be. And we've wanted to do it for a long time. We were in banking and consulting. How do we get into education, entrepreneurship? So back when we were in high school, our dad was really good about drilling in one lesson for us, and that was that there's not just one path. It's not all about the traditional path of graduating high school, getting to college, because you have to go to college. College is the gateway for success, and you need to get that degree from college so that you can graduate with a job, so that you can move out of your parents' basement, have money, be safe, be secure, and then maybe start to take some chances, which is how education encourages us to think about our lives and our future, and how society encourages us to think about all those things. He wanted us to know that there are people doing completely non-conventional things that are actually more successful than a lot of the people that follow the traditional path. That got us really excited. He exposed us to things like passive income, alternative investments, and ultimately entrepreneurship, which when he exposed us to entrepreneurship, something just clicked for me and Joseph. We just knew that we wanted to start a company at some point. We ideally wanted to be full-time entrepreneurs and potentially start a company together. But back in the day, there was in our high school, there was nothing to say, oh, you're excited about entrepreneurship. Let's use that excitement and help you start a company now, or take your classes through an entrepreneurial lens. It was more like, that's great. You should do that later on. But now focus on the SATs, pack in as many extracurriculars as you can, get as high a GPA as you can, because you got to follow that traditional path. We didn't like hearing that, of course, but we did it anyway because that's what everyone around us was doing. Went to Indiana University, graduated from the Kelley School of Business with finance degrees, and got hired as bankers and consultants in Chicago. We were making great money, had great jobs. By traditional definitions of success, we were very successful, but we were left looking around at each other saying, is this all there is? We felt really empty inside because we knew that there was this huge side of us that we hadn't been able to explore yet. So we sat back and just tried to think about what were the invisible scripts that led us to this point where we were doing something that we didn't love, which means we were never going to be that good at it. And when we started to reflect on our journey, we realized that so many students suffer from this issue, and they actually suffer way worse issues. They don't necessarily make it to become a banker and a consultant. Our one-size-fits-all education system is leaving so many students behind who aren't wired to sit in a classroom and memorize information that they'll never use again for 8 hours a day. Those students get labeled as never going to be able to amount to anything. They get told something's wrong with them, or they have a disability, or they're led to believe they're just never going to fulfill their potential, so they settle for the rest of their life. When we know, as a person in after school, that every student has something, a gift, a talent, a strength, a skill that can be pulled out and developed into something meaningful that they can contribute to the world and make it a better place. But education just isn't pulling that out, and we're seeing that play out with these stats. 74% of young adults graduating from school and feeling that school didn't fully prepare them for the real world. 70% of employers agreeing with that. And a lot of times when we're working with K-12, we think, if we can just get our students to college, especially those students who come from families who just haven't been to college before, we will be doing really good things. But if you look at this stat, over 50% of Hispanic and Black students will not graduate from college in 6 years, not 4 years, 6 years. This isn't good enough. This is not good enough. And I know we're preaching to the choir in after school. You are the visionaries who understand this. We wanted to create a solution that helps students avoid our path and encourage them to pursue work that they love, that leverage their unique strengths and passions and talents, help them build transferable skills they needed to get there, regardless of whether that ended up being their ultimate goal, right? They start out with a passion. It could change. Mine changed a lot, but you want to help them build transferable skills and tangible skills that they're going to need no matter what they end up doing, and equip them for skills in the 21st century. So in 2015, we left those banking and consulting jobs to start this company. And we started with workshops, and we thought to ourselves, okay, if we want to work with students, we have a program for students, we need to go to the schools because that's where students are. And seems logical, right? Schools should be excited to work with us. We have an innovative program. All we want to do is help them. And they were so resistant to work with us. And we really struggled for the first 2 years of our business because of that assumption that schools would want to work with us. And we didn't pay ourselves for the first year and a half of our company. But we found our people eventually. We found our people in after school programs. And that probably doesn't surprise you being in after school. But these were the organizations that were willing to take chances and that were already trying innovative new programs and trying to fill the gaps left by traditional education. And so you can see there we were fortunate to get recognized by the National After School Association as next generation leaders in after school, because we were starting to experience success with our content and with our workshops and developing these meaningful partnerships. And through these partnerships, we learned how stretched the people and resources are in after school and how dependent you are and your organization on continuously renewing your funding just to operate, let alone to try innovative things. You're trying to create a high quality experience for your students, for your staff and community, while constantly applying for grants, dealing with the staff turnover and burnout, and working relentlessly to hit your metrics for your funding. So what we wanted to do was develop a more comprehensive solution that could help after school professionals and after school programs. So we dove headfirst into the world of online learning and created a platform with turnkey courses on leadership, on college and career readiness, entrepreneurship, and personal finance that programs could just install and use as their core programs in their after school programs, or use them as supplementary programs. And we've been getting awesome results. The standout student outcomes we're seeing from our programs, mostly geared around the way students think about their future and how they've changed their attitude about school and their after school program, their family, their community, and themselves. Those are what keep us going. Those are what get us so excited. We're also seeing increased staff energy because they're reducing burnout by reducing staff prep time and dependency on individual staff members to deliver their program. And all this is leading to more funding opportunities from both existing sources and from new sources. So these programs are experiencing awesome results. These are some of the programs we mentioned that we're working with around the country. Because of the success we've experienced, we've been fortunate to get recognized in some pretty cool places. There's a magazine there of Joseph and I on the Lake in Chicago, which is where we live now. Grew up in Indianapolis, but we live here in Chicago now. We were fortunate to be featured in a couple published books, one by Dr. David Parker and Sharon Field. David Parker is an amazing person that we know well, and this book is all about attacking that problem that we talked about with traditional education. And then Jason Barnaby, author of the Igniting the Fire Starter Within, is a good friend and amazing keynote speaker, has an amazing Fire Starters program, profiles 5 different people who took huge risks to leave their jobs and follow their passions. And we were fortunate to be one of them. So that was really cool. And then below those logos are just some of the places we've been featured. Either our work has been featured, we've been able to contribute. 1871, the first logo, is the incubator that we were accepted into here in Chicago, which recently got named the #1 business incubator in the world. So all that's been pretty cool, but the stuff that keeps us going are these results that we're seeing for staff, students, and programs, and all the organizations using this system to grow their funding, grow their impact, and become the visionary leaders that they've always wanted to be in after school. What is cool, though, as we've grown our company and our reach, that it hasn't just been after school where our programs have been successful. STEM, STEAM, sports-based youth development, faith-based organizations, even museums and cultural institutions. We have been able to work with some schools who are innovative and who have been willing to take chances. All categories of schools, actually. Schools still make up a smaller portion of the programs, of the organizations using our programs, but there are some, and they're great schools using those. Fraternities and sororities is not somewhere we expected to be back to. Joseph and I were actually both president of our the same fraternity at Indiana University of Fiji, but they're using our programs for member development and for executive training. So really cool application there. The WIOA programs and workforce development initiatives, that one's always so cool because the scope is so large, helping impact a whole city or a whole county or a whole region or a whole state even. So those have been really fun and cool. And then we have after school programs or other programs that are trying to keep alumni engaged. So after a program ends in high school, for example, an after school program, then they have these students who are now alumni. They've graduated, but they don't necessarily have programming in place to keep them engaged. And so we're helping them establish these programs so that they can keep those students engaged, maybe have them come back and work for the organization, or even better, donate at some point to keep the organization, become a funder of the organization. So pretty cool applications beyond just after school. So let's get into the 4-step process to triple your impact and increase your funding in 90 days. Step 1 is to set long-term program goals before ever writing a new grant. Now, this seems counterintuitive because most organizations tend to use goals or develop goals based on what they think they can get for funding. And that results in organizations, maybe they can't even plan long-term because they're constantly responding to urgent demands. But when you can plan long-term, too many organizations do so limited by that budget funding factor. They do so based on what they've been able to get previously, historical funding levels, or their current budget, or the currently available resources. They just get limited in what they can imagine for their program by these factors. So they end up setting realistic program goals that they think they can hit and that they think funders can think they can achieve, because they want to make sure if they get funding to do something that they hit those metrics so that they keep getting funded. But this usually leads to just the same outcomes or maybe just incremental improvements. But we talked about how if you're only making incremental improvements, or if you're not even doing that, if you're just continuing to do what you've always done, you are at risk of losing your funding from all of your sources, because funders want to see you progressing, using their funding to grow and do new things and build on top of that, not just fund the same thing every single year. The new way to do it is to set unrealistic goals, unrealistic program goals before you write new grants. We'll talk about what unrealistic means in a second, but these goals are independent of historical funding levels or currently available resources. You are taking all limits out of the equation and allowing yourself to be the visionary that you are and imagine, what could our program accomplish if we didn't have limits in the next 5 years? And when you do that, when you start with a goal first that is not limited by current circumstances or historical circumstances, you get to generate better outcomes, and that leads to more funding opportunities. So a question we often get with unrealistic goals: first, what are unrealistic goals? And then I'm worried about setting goals I'm not confident we can achieve. So unrealistic goals is a core concept, actually, that we teach students in our courses. For 21st Century Community Learning Centers, it's basically the same. So for students, unrealistic goals, you think about the word unrealistic. Unrealistic gets thrown out when people think something is impossible. So if they think a goal you're setting is impossible, they would call it unrealistic. But the way we use unrealistic goals is absolutely something you can achieve, because unrealistic goals get achieved all the time. They just get called unrealistic before people see them happen. Will Smith has a great quote about this. He says, "It's unrealistic to walk in a room, flip a switch, and lights come on." That's unrealistic. But fortunately, Edison didn't think so. It's unrealistic to think you're going to bend a piece of metal and fly over an ocean in that metal. That's unrealistic. But fortunately, the Wright brothers and others didn't believe that. So you see that at one point, both of those things would have been considered completely unrealistic. People would have called them crazy. Now, you don't even think about it when you walk in a room and turn the lights on. If you're going to travel overseas, you're going to fly. You don't even think about that. Now we take them for granted, what were once unrealistic goals. And so the key with unrealistic goals is to understand that while other people are going to call them impossible, you know that they're not, because first you're going to start with that unrealistic, amazing, exciting, challenging goal, and then reverse engineer the action steps, which are going to be completely different than the action steps that you've used historically to achieve realistic goals. And the benefit with unrealistic goals is, number one, these are the goals that where, like we said, other people might call you crazy or your goals impossible. For students, we say your passions are connected to your goals. You do work that you absolutely love. You don't put limits on what you go after, and that ties down to your relationships, your lifestyle. You create a life that you're proud of. So unrealistic goals for 21st Century Community Learning Center organizations, these are the goals that other programs aren't willing to set because they're afraid of failure. But if you start with that amazing, exciting goal in mind and work backwards, these action steps are going to tie to the new goal, not to your old realistic goal. So you're going to be able to take your organization to new levels. You don't limit your vision. You start with that goal first, then you figure out how to get there and be flexible on how you get there. So how do you make this happen for your organization? Well, the first step is to map out your long-term vision for your program, students, and community. We're going to make this vision unrealistic. Not going to worry about what other people think might be impossible. We're going to focus on creating that unrealistic vision first and then figuring out the steps to get there. So first, when you think about in 10 years, when you're leading this organization, or maybe you're not, but you still obviously have a vested interest in how it turns out, what do you want it to look like? Without limits, what do you want all of these things to look like in 10 years? So establish that vision. You can do that yourself, or you can bring in your team members. It's a great exercise to do with your staff. Then do this one with your staff too, conduct a SWOT analysis of your program as it stands today. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So think about, as your program stands today, what are the current strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of your program? And then what you want to do in the last step is you're actually going to connect both of those. So you're going to say, if we want to accomplish this 10-year vision, what are the weaknesses and threats that we need to address in order to be able to achieve that 10-year vision? What are the roadblocks we have to remove? And we can set unrealistic 5-year program goals around that, because that's the halfway point, and 5 years is a little bit more near term, something we can talk about more tangibly in grants. But we can use that to talk about where we want to go and how we're going to address those. And think about your strengths and your opportunities as things you can use to capitalize on the opportunities available to you to achieve that 10-year vision. So all interrelated, but you want to use both of these exercises to help you set those 5-year unrealistic program goals that are going to help you stand out. A question we get a lot of times with this is, which of my goals need to be unrealistic? Which metrics are the ones that will help me get more funding? Well, as a 21st Century Community Learning Director, you probably already know that there are two categories of metrics that are important on a 21st century community learning center application. They're the metrics that all 21st century programs need to hit if they want to get 21st century funding. Those are the minimum requirements. But then there are those unique metrics for your site, those site specific metrics. This second category is where you get to stand out. If you have unrealistic goals, and they're all going to be different, right? Based on the number of students you serve, the current status of your program. But if you establish those metrics, those goals to be unrealistic, and then you've done the work to reverse engineer the action plan of how you're going to get there, it's going to stand out to funders because these are the things that programs aren't talking about. They're not willing to set these big goals. They're not willing to try this level of innovation for their program because they're worried they won't be able to do it and won't be able to sustain their funding. But you're the visionary leader who's taking the chances, setting the big goals, and then figuring out a way to get there. So once you do that, step 2 is to use an online program to reach more students and reach those students more effectively. The old way is to rely on in-person programming, but what happens is students have to physically show up to participate and be counted in your RAPs. This can be tough because if a student decides not to show up that day, or they can't get a ride, or they're in season for a sport, then they can't participate in your program and they can't be counted for that RAP day. And sometimes, as you know, one day can turn into a week or multiple weeks or even a month or longer. And we want to stop having that disruption, obviously for our reps, but more importantly, even for our students in that program. We want them to continue getting our quality program and feel invested and have that continuity. But it's hard to do if we only can serve them when they're in person. And a lot of programs experience this because of the pandemic. So the new way to do things is to use online learning as the core feature of your program, as the core feature. So your main programming content is housed online. The new result of that is that students can be engaged still while in person. We don't have to change we don't have to eliminate in-person programming, but students can still participate even if they don't show up. They can participate at home. Maybe they can't come because they're in season on a sport, but they can catch up during a free period during the school day, or they can catch up on the weekends when they have more energy. This online learning allows more students to be engaged, and you don't have to worry about student to staff ratios. You don't have to worry about wait lists or how many students you can have at an in-person session. You can serve more students. And because this progress and the outcomes are all tracked online through your program, you'll improve your reporting and you'll be able to produce and report on these quality outcomes. And this is what stands out to funders. So it all ties back to those long-term program goals and funding opportunities. So the steps to make this happen at your site, the first thing you want to do is evaluate your current program content, because you probably have some programs that you love and that your students love already. Is there one or more of those programs that you can convert into online learning that are suitable, that could be replicated in online learning? You can think about what's the best part of that program in its current state, and can we replicate that magic online? If not, if you're worried about translating that in-person course, in-person program into an online course, you can do some research and think about, is there a readily available program or online course that we could use to incorporate into our program that matches our goals and our funding metrics? There are sometimes free programs that you can access, like through your school district, through local community organizations, maybe even through statewide after-school networks or the National Afterschool Association. Or sometimes you may have to go invest in a program if you want to find one that actually meets your goals, but it just depends on what your program goals are. If you're using your own content, you decide that the program we want to turn that into an online program, then the next step is just to create digital versions of that content. So it could include videos, handouts, worksheets, workbooks, and assessments, and rubrics and other activities. Putting that online on a website or on a learning management system. And there are a lot of options for how to do that. We'll talk about that in a second. If you decide to use an outside program, you need to do the research, figure out which program makes sense for you based on your goals and your budget, and then purchase that program or acquire that program and have your staff get up to speed so that they understand what is going to be asked of them. They get familiar with the content and structure And then after that, they can help you. You can all together determine the new programming schedule. That's the last step. So you need to think about how much will students complete each week? How much will be asked of them each week? What will be completed in person versus what will be completed online or at home? What's the mix of that? What's required versus what is encouraged? Or is online just the alternative option? We encourage you to think about it as a core feature, but some programs have it as an alternative. It depends on what works best for you, but our recommendation is to make it that core feature of your program. So you want to think about how much your student's going to progress through each week. First question we often get with this is, how do I do this? How do I put my content online? Do I need software? What are my options for doing this? So the unfortunate answer is that there are endless options for how to do this. You could just go on the most basic level, the free level and most basic. You could just put videos on YouTube and use Google Docs or Microsoft Office Docs and different forms and just string together a course. And that definitely works, and it's free and it's probably fast. The problem though is that it makes it really hard to track progress. There's no continuous system or underlying system that can track progress and results and outcomes. A free tool that is pretty good at doing this is Google Classroom. So if you already are on Google, or if your students are already on Google, this could be a good option for you. There's a slight learning curve, and there's definitely limitations. It's a free tool, but it's definitely a good option if you're considering getting something up really fast and using Google Classroom. There are also inexpensive paid tools you can use, like Teachable or Thinkific, and these are learning management systems, but they're basically they're best for one entrepreneur, for example, who wants to create a course on their expertise and then just sell it to as many people as possible. Once they're on the platform, they're not as worried about things like tracking student progress or being able to split up different groups and have multiple instructors managing different groups of students. So if you have multiple sites or multiple age groups that you're trying to use it with, those inexpensive, really popular platforms can make it tougher. There are definitely learning management systems that allow you that multi-site functionality and that progress and reporting tracking. But the problem with these is they can either be so expensive because they just have an underlying base fee that's expensive, and or they charge you money per user on the platform. So every time you want to add a new student or a new instructor, you have to pay for those additional users. So then you get into making decisions that you probably don't want to make, like do we have enough capacity to add more students, or can this student actually participate, or do we need a staff member to be on there? Do we just need to share an account? So decisions you probably don't want to make. Or there are platforms that don't charge by the user, but these tend to be so customized. Trust us, we've gone through this process. They tend to be so customizable that there's a huge learning curve to get them out of the box. They're just basically blank out of the box, and to get them to a point where they work well, let alone look good and get students excited about being on there, is really hard. There's a huge learning curve, and it takes a lot of time and investing some energy there. So at the most premium end, you can always hire an educational consultant to help you plan and create the course. And this is a good option if you have a huge budget for it. But the good educational consultants cost money, so you need to just choose the best option among that spectrum that works best for your organization and your budget. A lot of organizations ask, what if we still want to run in-person programs? We actually encourage you to do both. Online courses, online learning does not have to replace your in-person program. In fact, it should actually enhance your in-person program. And it will allow you to reach more students because, again, you're not constrained by a lot of the limits of in-person programming. The best combo is to have students use online learning to learn the core concepts and go through the core aspects of learning that you have for them through your program. But then they get to apply it in the real world with their own projects, their in-person learning led by a staff member or an instructor. They get to progress through their individual or team projects there. Instructors can just lead discussions and really challenge students' thinking and have them apply it to their own goals and their own learning. And that's when the magic happens, is when that online learning gets reinforced by in-person programming with your staff. What if I can't get my students to log in from home? This is another question because of the pandemic. Some programs struggle with burnout from students being online and then asking them to be online again. So the key here is to have the right program in place first. This is where a lot of programs miss the mark, is because the key, you have to have student-centered learning in place first. What is student-centered learning? So going by the definition of the International Society for Technology in Education, again, you probably already know what this is, or you may already be doing some of it, or you at least know the spirit of it, but maybe not the term. Basically, all it is student-centered learning is where students take charge of their own learning. They get to make decisions about how they learn. They get to choose the sources. Everything's not laid out for them in a textbook or even in an online video. They're in charge of doing their own learning, of building their own skills, of practicing on their own. They get to actually be the ones discovering, and this turns them from passive receivers of information into active learners, which is how it works in the real world, how it always works. So it's better that we get students started on this process now anyway, because one of the things that students suffer from so much when they graduate and get thrown into the workforce is they're asked to learn and build and help a company or help wherever they're working. They're at their job, they're asked to do it this way, and they've never been asked to do it before. But this is actually, even though it's harder for students, especially at the beginning, then they get to realize like, oh, but I get to drive the learning. I get to even drive the content. I get to pick the content that I'm learning. This is when the magic happens, and this is when it's not going to feel like any other online program, and students are going to be more likely to log in because they're going to realize that this program is personalized for me. You saw that quote from Naika, how when there's an online program, students get to find their path, and when we provide just the structure, they see, okay, wow, like this process is going to teach me like self-management. I'm going to be able to do this on my own, but I get to pick the areas where I'm already excited about something. So I'm not going to have to be pulling strings or pulling teeth to get myself to log back in, because this is fun. Like I'm already on my device all the time. It's more of just like, what am I doing on this device, or what am I being asked to do? Now I'm excited to get in. Then you have students who are invested in your program and aren't thinking about this as just another online class. So that'll still help you produce those amazing results that you've always been looking for your students. So how do you turn your program into student-centered learning if it isn't already? It's actually pretty easy. It depends. Obviously, there's nuances with your specific program content, but you could create a new one from scratch pretty easily. The hardest part is for staff to let go of the really rigid structure that they're used to, where they hold all the content that they're teaching to students. So imagine that you have 3 students, Desmond, Sarah, and Serena. You got Desmond, who's passionate about football. Sarah is passionate about video games, and then Serena is passionate about music. Normally, if you wanted all 3 of them to be super excited about one single program, it'd be hard to do because you have static curriculum that only focuses on one discipline or one area of content. Student-centered learning allows for all 3 of them to incorporate their passions into the same program, into the same project. So, for example, if you wanted to create one from scratch, the first thing you would do is you would just choose a project as the culminating program deliverable. So you pick a date by when this project has to be finished and when they're going to deliver that program deliverable. It can be an essay, a presentation, passion project, community project, creating a startup, creating a song, whatever it is, you can decide what that deliverable is, something that you get excited to work to help students with, and that students get excited to deliver. You choose a structure for this project in step 2. So this is like, you've chosen the deadline. Now you work backwards. You can tell we're big on working backwards as the activities and the deliverables for the project. So what are they doing day by day, week by week? This is basically the schedule. And you're also building out the rubrics and the assessments. How are students going to be evaluated at the end and also intermittently, so that students know, okay, I know how I'm going to be evaluated, but I still, in step 3 as a student, get to determine the content of my project. So even though everyone's going to be doing a presentation, I get to do mine about the thing that I'm excited about. So this is pretty cool. Obviously, I have to meet these requirements because they're going to challenge me to learn these intangible skills, but I'm going to be in charge of the project. And this is exciting maybe a little scary because there's a lot of ambiguity and not as much structure, but this is exciting because I'm learning about something I'm excited about. So then students learn by doing the online research. They connect with experts. They practice on their own and they fail early and often, which is so important to get better. You got to get past that really first initial amateur phase where students often get so embarrassed about how bad they are. It's one of the most important lessons I learned as an entrepreneur. You have to be bad at something before you can be good at something. We need to get students started on that sooner. We need to get them started on that now so they see how they can get started on that path and actually imagine using these same skills, their passions and these skills they're building around them for their future. So when we set it up like this, they have fun. But while they have fun, they gain experience and build skills, which is the best way to learn. So let's say you choose a passion project as the deliverable, and each student's required to deliver a presentation with slides or a media to showcase what they did. Well, you have Desmond, Sarah, and Serena all building critical skills of self-management, learning on their own, sourcing their own information, dealing with uncertainty, written and public speaking skills, even graphic design and other skills, while working on separate passions that all excite them. But you won't have to constantly pep talk them because each student is working on something that excites them. So Desmond gets to put his energy into a passion project about football. How cool is that? He loves football more than anything. Football is now a central part of his project, his after-school program, learning and development. Sarah gets to do the same thing with video games. We hear that so often from after-school providers that all my students want to do is play video games. They think they're going to play video games for their career because they see those people making so much money. There are so many different careers now around video games. Students just need to build complementary skills around that, and they can do that through this project-based learning setup, through this student-centered learning. Serena, same thing with music. Everyone assumes they're going to be a music artist, and then they realize how hard that is, but they haven't built any complementary skills around it. Serena will be doing that with transferable intangible skills. Even if she decides she doesn't want to have a career in music later on, she'll have built skills that will transfer to any career that she wants with this student-centered learning and project-based learning setup. So that's the power of having a student-centered online program as the core feature of your after-school program. Once you do that, step 3 is to depend less on your staff to improve student outcomes, which sounds counterintuitive, but probably less so now because you realize that the core content of your program is online. The old way would be relying on your staff to deliver your program in person. That was the only way to do it. Maybe you tried to incorporate this into a Zoom virtual setup during the pandemic, but you still were relying on your staff to deliver the content to your students. What can happen is your program quality and consistency can suffer when you have to do this because we talked about the wide-ranging experience of your staff. Let's say you have that all-star staff member who students just love, who has so much experience, and you just never worry about the program and the experience students are going to have when that person is there and the one leading your program. But what happens when they're sick, or if they happen to move on to another organization, or take a vacation? What happens when you have that 19-year-old with no experience coming in? If you're completely relying on them and they don't have a lot of experience, the program quality and consistency is going to suffer. So you have a lot of key person risk when you only depend on your staff to be able to deliver your program. The new way is to use that online course to actually take pressure off of your staff and reduce your dependency on individual staff to deliver your program. This improves your program. There's no other way for your program to go but up. It's only going to improve. As a result, your staff is more energized. Your students are more engaged, and that's, of course, going to lead to better student outcomes, better program outcomes, and it all ties back to those funding opportunities for your program. So how do you make this happen at your organization? Well, the first step is to follow step 2. Eliminate staff prep time through the online program. Again, the core content is in that online program, so staff don't have to get totally up to speed on a new program, presentation. They don't have to, not all staff have to be world-class educational experts, world-class teachers to be able to have a great program experience because they're just reinforcing the content that was learned by students through the online course. And the project-based learning, students are doing a lot of that learning on their own. So these next steps are actually going to focus on you creating the culture that you want at your organization, where your staff is energized. They're not burnt out. They're excited to come to work. They're excited to have the impact on their students. They're excited about the online program and the results that it's delivering and the progress they're seeing with students. And they see this as a place where they can come and it's actually furthering their own personal goals, the staff members' personal goals are being helped by being associated with your organization. So what you can do is send out a survey to your staff to get a gauge on how they're spending their time every single day and every single week. What you'll realize is you'll uncover some things that you made assumptions about that may not be true. And you may find out some things that, wow, I really don't want them spending that much time on this not that important redundant activity, or we could easily install a system or spend just a little bit of money and solve this problem so that we can free up staff to focus more on prep time or focus more on connecting with students or meeting one-on-one with students. That you can get some really valuable insights from a survey asking staff how they're spending their time. This can help you reduce staff burnout because you're reducing their commitments on things that maybe they don't enjoy doing or they shouldn't really have to be doing. Then what you want to do is have your staff come up with a weekly personal development and self-care routine. You want your staff to come to your program ready to go. Even if you have the best online course in the world, you're still going to have students that are excited to be with their friends. Sometimes it's hard to get them focused because they're just excited to be there, which is a great problem to have, but that can make facilitating discussions and doing some other activities challenging. You want your staff to come in energized, ready to go, ready to enhance that online learning that students are doing. And so you need them to be their best selves so they can be their best selves for your students and give them the best experience possible. So help them come up with a weekly personal development routine. Make sure, and self-care, make sure that they're getting the sleep they need, that they're getting the physical activity, provide some nutritional guidance and resources to make sure that they're eating well and have that energy. It even will serve you well if you establish some formal routines at your organization that they get to experience, like meditation Fridays, 10 minutes before you start the program on Fridays, or walking staff meetings on Mondays to get people outside and mixing it up. Any of those formal routines you can establish at your organization are just going to improve that culture and make your program somewhere where staff want to be. And that's ultimately what we want. The last step, if you don't already do this, is to set up recurring one-on-one check-in meetings with each person on your staff. These could be monthly, these could be more often if you'd like, but the purpose of these is to be able to build a stronger relationship with each staff member. The benefits of this are huge. You can find out things that are bothering staff members that you would have never found out, that they're never going to share in a group setting, or things that staff members are struggling with at home that you had no idea about, or things that they would want to change. Or this often happens where staff members have these ideas that they would love to try that would actually be great for your program, but they were afraid to bring it up to you in a group setting, or they just assume that you may not want to try it. You can discover all those things by building stronger relationships with each staff member and holding one-on-one meetings more often with your staff. And you'll be amazed at some of the things you find out, and you'll see staff get re-energized, and you'll just have a lot of benefits from checking in with your staff on a more personalized basis. A question we often get is, you're talking about reducing staff prep time. Won't my staff still have to learn how to use the system and prep to deliver the new content? A great online course, we talked about this, will provide the meat and potatoes of the content for your program that students need to learn. And then again, we talked about how they're going to be doing a lot of their own learning by doing research and finding their own sources. And then you have workbooks and activities that are helping them plan out and apply this new content and these concepts to their goals and their individual projects or their team projects. The instructors should be familiar with the course. And we always encourage instructors to actually take the online course, or if it's a curriculum, read through the whole curriculum, but take the course as if you were a student, because that tends to eliminate all of the questions. You understand all that a staff member would have. You understand all the little nuances and probably can anticipate where students might have questions. And that just makes you that much better. That makes your staff that much better prepared to deliver a positive experience and do so with not very much prep time at all, session to session. Again, a little investment up front to take the course, but after that, students are doing a lot of the learning on their own through the course and by doing their own research and learning. So staff are just there to reinforce the concepts. They could do as little as just tracking progress, but we talked about those standout programs who are using the in-person sessions to reinforce the online learning. So that instructor involvement can be scaled up to leading discussions and activities based on the course material, just asking questions and letting students drive the content, but setting up those critical thinking moments for students to challenge what they're learning and what they're thinking about based on what they learn. Even with this scaled up involvement, prep time goes way down, and more importantly, your dependency on high quality staff consistently showing up or consistently being the ones doing the program goes way down. And so that improves the quality of your program. What if I have staff who are resistant to change and use an online program? If you complete action step D above, you have those one-on-one meetings. If a staff member cares about your students and your program and you explain to them in a one-on-one setting why you're doing the things you're doing and how it's going to benefit everyone, they're going to be on board. Maybe they get to vent even their frustrations, but I'll bet as a leader and what you're trying to accomplish with this new program, you can talk to them and address those concerns in a way that all it'll probably take is that one personalized conversation and they'll be on board. So once you've done that, first 3 steps, now step 4 is to develop new funder relationships and enhance existing ones. Most organizations year to year just apply for similar funding from the same sources, or if they want to get more funding, or hopefully they're not in a desperate situation, but a lot of times if they are, or they're trying to just get more funding, the strategy is to let's just apply for as many grants as we can. But that typically is done without doing much legwork to establish relationships, to actually talk to these funders, get to know what their funding priorities are. And so what it leads to is, yes, maybe because you're casting a wide net, you do get lucky and get some funding, but a lot of times it just leads to similar levels of funding, which leads to similar programming, similar staffing, incremental results. And we talked about how that can lead to you losing funding eventually. And all the while, you're just going to continue to worry about sustainability, that financial sustainability for your organization. So the new way to do it is to engage your new and current funders with your new program goals and results, the activities that you've already implemented in those first 3 steps. And what that's going to lead to is more predictable funding from current and prospective funders who want to see big ideas and innovative solutions. One of the main benefits of establishing your program first on your own, like we talked about in these first 3 steps, and then talking to funders is similar to entrepreneurship and what I see a lot on Shark Tank, which is these poor entrepreneurs coming onto the show and being so early with their revenue, not being even pre-revenue sometimes. There's just not enough momentum for sharks to jump on and get behind, because what they want to do is fund things that are already working and use their expertise to just make it explode. But they're not trying to get involved in a project where they have to help the founder figure out what the right steps to take even are to get this product off the ground. They want the founders to do that work. The same thing is true. Maybe they're not as strict, but funders are the same way, where they want to pour gasoline on a fire that's already started. They want to pour money into something that's already working so that they can see their money actually producing awesome results instead of taking huge risks or just giving it to programs who are going to use it the same way that they've always used it. So having that mentality and doing these first 3 steps, understanding that mentality and doing these first 3 steps will help you stand out to those funders and allow them to jump on the bandwagon of something that's already working. So the way to do this for your organization, first, you want to connect with your current funders. You want to understand what their top funding priorities are over the next 3 to 5 years. We can always guess. We can always assume it's going to stay the same. But just having the conversation and getting in front of them again is always a good step. And you never know. You may learn something really insightful that you didn't know, and you can be like, oh, wow, that's a huge funding priority. We already do that. We just don't highlight that, or that's something that we could really easily start doing and incorporate into our applications. The next thing you want to do is basically replicate the same thing with new funders. So you want to first, in step B, come up with a list of 10 new funders. Think about foundations, initiatives, trends like American Rescue Plan funding that's coming out, things like that, where that provide opportunities for you to connect with funders. It could be funders that have funded you before, but haven't in a couple years, or people you've reached out to before but haven't been able to connect with. Now you have these new program goals, this new program installed, and this new turnkey system that's going to produce these amazing student outcomes. You have something really valuable to talk about with these funders. So set up brainstorming conversations with these funders and try to understand, same thing like you did with your existing funders, try to understand their funding priorities and what their successful grantees have looked like in the past. Question we often get with this is we don't have relationships with many large funders, or we have our core funders, but we don't really know how to build new relationships. Well, whether you think about it like this or not, your organization is a business. It's a nonprofit business. And when you have a business, it's hard to do anything if you don't have sales, if you don't sell and generate revenue. For nonprofits, for after-school programs, it's the same thing. It's just called fundraising. It should always be a priority for your program. It has to be, so that your program can sustain itself and then grow. We're talking about growth and impact. We're visionaries. We don't want to just maintain the status quo. So according to the reputable website Charitable Advisors, this year, they say that as nonprofits and fundraisers, you should be focused on optimizing your portfolios, so to focus on the right prospects. You want to make sure that you're engaging new prospects. So we talked about that, steps B and C. And then you want to establish continuity plans for any special pandemic fundraising initiatives that you get. You never want to be in a situation where you get this great one-time grant and do something amazing with it, but then you don't have any plans on how to continue that beyond the period when that funding expires. You don't want to have to get rid of that program. You don't want to have to eliminate any staff you were able to add or promote to be able to run that program. So establishing continuity plans for that is important. Again, summarizing, you basically need to be thinking about this all the time. It doesn't mean you have to be applying for grants all the time, but this needs to be a strategic priority for you. And when you do that, if you have funding relationships that are aligned with your organization's mission and program goals, if you can acquire new funding to enhance existing efforts like we talked about versus conceptual, versus waiting for the funding to then start your program or initiate this new initiative, and then you can start operating beyond survival mode into growth and impact mode, your organization will have no choice but to thrive, and it'll thrive in ways that it never has before. And like you always wanted, you'll be well on your way to leaving your legacy with your organization. So the process to make this happen at your organization, 4 steps. Set long-term program goals before you write new grants. Then use an online program to reach more students more effectively. Depend less on your staff because of that online program, and actually all the while improve your student outcomes. And with these new student outcomes, you can develop new funder relationships and enhance existing ones, making it a constant priority for your organization, so that you move beyond the worry about sustainability and you're in growth and impact mode. And when you do that, you'll be able to increase your funding while engaging your students and staff like never before. Sounds awesome, right? Well, let's not leave it here. Let's make sure we talk about the options for you to go back and implement this at your organization. The first way we call it the hard way. It's the do-it-yourself, which tends to be a high achiever mentality. As a 21st century leader, you probably do a lot of things yourself. The only problems with this are it could take a long time. It could take 6 months or more to get your online program converted, up and running, and then start to engage these new funders. Oftentimes it takes a lot longer than that, and you always have to think about the opportunity cost. It seems like the cheapest option, but you have to think about the opportunity cost. What are you taking yourself away from by investing a ton of time doing this yourself? What are you taking your staff away from by them investing a ton of time in doing this themselves, especially if they're already burnt out, or they or you don't have a lot of experience taking existing program content and putting it online. So those are opportunity costs you have to think about. The other thing is that your program in its online form won't have been tested yet with students. So you're not going to be sure if it works until you actually get students on there, which again is another period of time that you have to wait to make sure that you're getting good results. And you got to make sure that all the evaluation criteria transfers to online and that it aligns with your funding priorities. So again, you can do this yourself, but you got to consider the opportunity costs and all the time it's going to take to do that. The other option is, we call it the expensive way. You can hire a consultant to do this. The only thing is you need to be really sure that you're hiring a high quality consultant, because the quality can vary a lot. So you just want to make sure that you're getting one of the good ones, and the good ones tend to be more expensive. So just make sure that if you're hiring a consultant, have them show you examples of their work, and ideally examples of work that very closely align with what you want to do with your online program for your after school program. But if you have it in the budget and you can hire an educational consultant, again, the good ones are more expensive. This is not a bad way to go. It still takes time though, because they're going to be creating something from scratch. Even if they're translating a program that's fully built out, but it's not online, it's going to take some time to put it in that online format. So you just have to factor that in, budget, and the time it takes to get it up and running using this option. The third option we like to call the easy way. And this is when you use 220 and you can start your program overnight for a fraction of the price and effort of those first two options. If you go with 220, the easy way, it's fast, effective, it's funder aligned, it's been tested for years with thousands of students, it's cheaper than the alternative options. You can get access to it overnight, you can get it up and running immediately, and your staff and students will love it. And we know that because of the results that we've seen and shared with you from those programs around the country. And again, this is for after school program directors who want to grow their impact and increase their funding, but they don't know exactly how to make it happen, or they're worried about the resources or the time it will take to make that happen. We have 200 plus organizations that are making it happen, that are using 220, and they're getting those fantastic results. Why Central Maryland? This was a really cool one. So they have this amazing youth employment program that services up to 250 students every single summer, high school students. But when the pandemic hit, all that programming used to be done in person. And so they didn't have an option for how to continue this program with their students during the pandemic. So they reached out to us and we set them up on our 220 platform, and they were able to engage 250 students and not lose a step in their youth employment program. We got them up and running in less than 30 days, and these teens were able to go through the leadership course, resume course, interview course, and personal finance course, and have an amazing experience over the summer without losing it just because of the pandemic. So that was a really fun partnership. Brooke and Heather are great from the Y of Central Maryland. Museum of Science and Industry of Chicago. What a cool STEM program. They have this STEM program for high school students where it's so high quality that, number one, they train them to be employees at the museum. So they're getting hands-on employee training to work at one of the most prestigious museums in the world. And then they're also connecting them with these amazing scholarship opportunities and just an amazing resume building experience for college or for whatever they want to do later on by going through this weekly program on Saturdays where they come to the museum for basically a full day and get trained on STEM topics, on STEM projects, and then on how to work at the museum. We met the Museum of Science and Industry back at the Illinois Afterschool Network Conference several years ago. They saw one of our foundational workshops on setting unrealistic goals like we talked about, and they wanted to bring us in to add a personal development component to their program to make sure that their students were not just getting the hard skills, but also the intangible skills that are going to help them succeed in the 21st century. And so we helped them install a new personal development program that served over 100 STEM students and got amazing results. We went on topics through online courses. We went through topics ranging from leadership and personal development to resume building, interview skills, social skills, and we also talked about entrepreneurship and some other passion project related projects. So really the quality of students and people and staff in this program I can't speak highly enough of. You can see Lottie and Tanita had some awesome things to say about working together. We talked about Chick Tech Chicago going from no entrepreneurship program to a new $15,000 grant to start a new entrepreneurship program in Chicago. We talked about the Indiana Afterschool Network going from 0 to 200 plus students engaged in a college career readiness program in 3 months. And now we're expanding that program to go for the next couple years with different topics on entrepreneurship, personal finance, and college career readiness with resume and interview. Michigan City Safe Harbor is another one. So Safe Harbor is the after-school program arm of Michigan City area schools. And they were actually one of the 21st century sites that participated in the Indiana After-School Network cohort. And because of that we worked together, they had actually obtained a grant to start a new entrepreneurship program for their elementary and middle school students, but didn't have the time or availability to create the program. And so they asked us to help them create this new online entrepreneurship experience for students. And we were able to go from 0 students on this platform or in an entrepreneurship program to 140 students at 8 different sites engaged in this new online entrepreneurship program in 3 months. So what a cool experience. And Abby is one of the most impressive 21st Century Community Learning Center directors that we've worked with. She's a visionary, thought about this program conceptually, and just brought us in to help her bring it to life. So she's been awesome to work with. We talked about Employindi going from only in-person trainings to a full built-out on-demand learning management system with a lot of courses that are continuing to get built out. And you can see there Chelsea, who's again another super high-quality leader and executive at Employindi, had some really good things to say about our work together and going from no learning management system to what it is today and what it will become. Union League Boys and Girls Clubs, one of the best premier Boys and Girls Club organizations across the country. They are so good at getting funding and implementing high quality programs. They have multiple sites across the city of Chicago. And they brought us in because they wanted to improve the quality of their staff and mentor training and to ultimately improve the outcomes and the interactions that they were having with the youth at their sites. And so they went from no staff and mentors being engaged in this online training format on these topics to having over 100 engaged, and we were able to help them build out that program. We're still working with them together, and Hector had some really good things to say about the program we put together and created together. And then you can see some of the results that we got from staff from the programs that we did together. So really, really cool program with Union League. Edna Martin Christian Center is a neighborhood development organization in Indianapolis that works with the Martindale Brightwood neighborhood. Historically has suffered from a lot of the issues that low-income communities all over the country suffer from. You know, things like generational poverty, education, and economic development. They're doing an amazing job turning it around. They're the people at Edna Martin, Barato and Jamie and Ashley are just doing such amazing work. And they wanted to bring us in to help them establish a new online program that they could use community-wide. So not just engaging students at the middle school and brand new high school, but also engaging families and giving them resources on how to reinforce these concepts at home and even take to heart some of these concepts and apply them to their own lives. So that's been a really cool partnership, and you can see some of the results we've gotten so far. I have a better idea of what success means to me, and I'm more confident I will be successful. I know I can turn my passions into a career. This was a meaningful experience in my life. We've got 100% of students going through the program saying that they agree or strongly agree on those results. So you can see some more results that we've gotten from some of the surveys through the online program. And this is just what you get when you work with 220. Like the partners we've helped above, you'll be able to generate student and staff engagement like you've never seen before. You'll be able to reduce staff burnout by cutting staff prep time in half or even more. You'll be able to reach more students than you ever have before, and you can help those students develop the skills they need to land their dream job or create their dream job. You can double your program budget in the next 12 months if you execute this strategy properly, and you can forget about spending weeks on end collecting data for your funders because it's all built in. You'll be able to streamline your staff professional development. We'll talk about an exciting feature in a second that will help you do that. You'll be able to teach 21st century skills to your students to help them succeed in this new era of innovation and automation. Skills like entrepreneurship, leadership, and advanced communication skills. You and your staff will be re-energized. You'll feel empowered, confident, and motivated to do your best work and to take this organization to a new level. You'll have programs to engage students when they're on site or when they're at home. Again, increasing that reach, reaching students more effectively. And you'll have a standout program that community leaders will want to highlight at their conferences and in publications. You'll be on your way to leaving that legacy on your organization and in your community. So what you get with 220, ready to implement learning tracks. Before, when you wanted to create a new program, you'd have to do all the work yourself or hire an educational consultant and spend a ton of time on that development. Now you can just use our ready to implement learning tracks on leadership, on the professionalism with resume and entrepreneurship, resume and interview skills, and entrepreneurship and personal finance without spending tens of thousands of dollars on custom building or stringing together boring and outdated resources. These content tracks are ready to go. They've got the content that your students will be excited about and that will align with your funding priorities. You get access to these courses on a world-class LMS, and you get that with unlimited accounts. So you're not going to be charged per instructor or per user. Before, if you wanted to do this, you'd have to bring your art program online. You'd have to research which LMS is best. You'd have to maybe hire a consultant and spend months working on it, figuring out the technology, content design. Now, you get to use our all-in-one LMS. You get your whole organization on board. You can get them online overnight. You don't have to wait. This is a quick process. We get you onboarded and we get you started so that you can start producing these results and share them with funders. And you get all of it. The learning pass, you get badging, you get student portfolios, and all you got to do is enroll your students and your staff. We'll also give you the reporting tools and templates. The reporting tools are built into the platform. Before, you'd have to do a lot of manual measurement and data collection and incorporate that into your grant reports. Now you can just use our digital reporting tools, and we even have a grant template that you can pretty much copy and paste into your grant applications that talk about our programs and the impact that it's going to have on your students or that it's already having on your students. Obviously, you can incorporate the real results into those applications. We also have the onboarding course, which is a great feature because a lot of times if you want to implement a brand new program or a brand new system of teaching, you would have to organize a full day or a multi-day, or we've even heard of a week-long training to get these new programs up and running. We have an on-demand onboarding course that will get your staff up and running in as little as 30 minutes. It's that quick. It's that easy. They'll get the full nuts and bolts of what's possible on the platform, and then we'll get them started taking that course. We talked about how it's important for instructors to take the course before they teach it to students, but we'll get them pointed in that right direction, and they can do it on their own time. You don't have to disrupt a program day, or you don't have to schedule a full session with all of your staff to be able to get onboarded and get up and running on the course. We also have monthly professional development for any users of the 220 platform, any staff members of the 220 platform. Before, if you wanted to do professional development, you were organizing that. You were maybe paying a speaker to come in or paying someone to do a webinar, or you were using a free resource in the community, and maybe that was really good. Maybe some of them weren't so good, but it still involved a lot of manual prep time from you and organization. Now you can make sure your staff is always getting high quality PD through our monthly professional development, and you don't have to organize it. Recorded trainings will be available. So if we run these trainings live, and of course we'd love for your staff to join live, but if for some reason they can't make a certain one, or they're held at a time that staff just aren't available, they'll be recorded and uploaded into the platform so staff can work through those trainings even if they miss the live version. Weekly student Q&A webinars. Before, if you wanted students to directly connect with course creators and the content experts to ask questions, or if you wanted them to connect with other students, you'd have to manually set that up. If you wanted to connect with the course creator, often that's pretty difficult. I'm not sure that how often that's even made available. But for your students on the 220 platform, they get to log in to our weekly student webinars, and they get to ask us questions that they experience going through the course. And they get to also even connect with students that are working on similar courses or have similar interests. So it's a really cool opportunity for your students to go beyond just what's inside the online courses. And then your staff may have questions as they go through this, or you might even have questions. We hold weekly office hours where you can book a time and get one-on-one help from myself or from Joseph. So you're getting direct help from a 220 staff member, and you can use our weekly office hours feature, where before it was almost impossible to get help with program implementation, or it was hard to get it a fast enough turnaround so that you could get back to what you're doing and solve that problem, because most of the time you're trying to move quick, you're trying to solve problems quickly. Now you can use our weekly office hours feature. We hold them every single week to get your questions answered. You don't have to stay stuck. So as you can see, we're not your typical after-school program or your after-school platform. Our programs are not one size fits all because they're all based on project-based learning. They're all student-centered. Everything that we teach is authentic and not academic. We mean that because we don't have a formal education background, which sometimes I'm not downplaying that, but sometimes that can be a disadvantage if curriculum are always and courses are always created based on theory, based on research, and written by someone who has never actually done what they're writing a curriculum on. Everything that we teach you is something that we've gone out and proven for ourselves, made sure it works, validated it with research on other top performers to make sure that it wasn't just working for us in a vacuum, and then created and refined these courses over the years to make sure that they're practical, that they're proven, but that they're authentic. So when your students are learning about entrepreneurship, they're learning from two entrepreneurs. They're not learning from someone who just knows how to write curriculum. And then when you look at our LMS, those are just the courses. You get the courses included. Most LMS platforms are just blank platforms where you add your own courses. So then you have to worry about that. Ours come preloaded with these courses, with these learning paths, tracks, and badging and portfolios that are designed to help your students not only succeed, but get the results you need to show your funders and to get more funding. Again, you can get as many students as you want on there, as many staff members as you want on there. We include the professional development and office hours. Students have the chance to jump on the weekly Q&A. You get the grant templates and the data and reporting all included in the learning management system. So when you look at these components individually, it adds up to a ton of value. The world-class LMS with unlimited accounts, the different tracks, the learning tracks, leadership, professional, entrepreneurship, personal finance, the pass, badging, and portfolio. You get the reporting tools, onboarding course to get your staff up and running, monthly professional development to maintain that high-quality staff training and implement high-quality staff training, the weekly office hours, weekly student Q&A webinars, and those templates and the reporting. When you join 220, you get all of this for a fraction of that total value, estimated at over $116,000. You're not even going to pay anything close to that if you want to use 220 with your programs to take it to the next level. If you're excited about this, if you feel like this is a great fit for your organization and your goals, the next step is to book a call. So go to 220leadership.com/quiz. We'll ask you to fill out a brief questionnaire to make sure that we have all the information we need coming into the call. We want as much background information as possible so we can be efficient on the call. And then what you'll do is you'll actually book a time that works for you to speak directly with a 220 team member, either Joseph, myself, or another 220 team member. You'll be well taken care of on that call. We're going to dive into learning as much as we can about you and your program, what your goals are, what obstacles you're worried about, or things you're worried about with implementing a new program. We'll address all those concerns on the call. We'll make sure this is a good fit for you, your students, and your program. And then we'll talk about specific implementation strategies based on the nuances of your program. We want to make sure, again, this is a good fit for you, but if it is, we can get you up and running really quickly, and we'd love to do that. So make sure that you have your decision makers on the call. If that's you, perfect. Make sure you're on the call. If you need someone else to be on the call to help you make that decision, they make the purchasing decisions like this, make sure that they're on the call, and also make sure, if you can, that they watch this video beforehand. This will make the call as efficient as possible, and we want to get this up and running for you as soon as possible. We don't want your students and your staff to have to wait to start getting these results, and your program to start experiencing these results. We want you to share these results with your funders as soon as you can, and share this new exciting opportunities that you're installing as soon as you can. So if you're excited, if you're ready to book that free strategy call, go to 220leadership.com/quiz. You'll take that quick questionnaire, you'll book the time that works for you, and we'll be really excited to connect with you and learn about your program. My name is Matthew Moybon. Thanks for watching.